Hi everyone, Jay Adams here from Denver Water along with John Myrtle from CSU Extension. And in this video, we're going to talk about soil type. And John, why is it so important to know what type of soil you have?
Understanding your soil is important for two main reasons. The first is to understand which types of plants are likely to thrive the best in your yard with minimal care from you. And the second is to understand how water is going to move through the soil in your yard.
Here in Colorado's Front Range, what are the most common types of soil?
You know, we have a huge number of soil types all along the Front Range. Usually if you ask somebody here, what kind of soil do you have? They'll say, oh, I've got this horrible clay. And it's true that clay is a part of our soils here, especially if you're in a newer development where all the topsoil's been gone and a lot of subsoil's been brought up. You might have really high percentages of clay. For the most part though, in more developed parts, older parts of the Front Range, we've got a lot of loam soils and clay loam soils. If you're in a lower area of town, closer to a waterway, you might even be on sandy soil. So don't assume just because you live in Colorado that you have clay. You want to do some investigating and find out what you have.
All right, so now you're going to give us a couple of ways to show how to test your soil?
Absolutely. So we're going to talk about three ways that you can find out what your soil texture is. We've got the easy way, the slightly harder way, and then the super easy way.
All right, I can't wait.
Yeah, so the easy way is called the jar test. And basically, you take a straight-sided jar. I like spice jars. You can use a ball jar. It's just got to have straight sides. And you put about 1/3 of the jar filled with soil from your future landscape. The next third with water. And then you leave about 1/3 of the jar empty. You can put a drop or two of something like Jet Dry or some other non-ionic surfactant. Don't use dish soap or you'll get a lot of bubbles. And then shake it. The idea is that you're breaking down the soil peds or particles of soil into its constituent parts of sand, silt, and clay. You see, every soil is made of sand, silt, and clay particles in a certain percentage. Those percentages in relation to each other are what tell you if you have sandy clay loam or silt. Once you've shaken your jar, you're going to set it down and let things settle. The first things to settle are the sand particles because they're the largest and they will be at the bottom of the jar. Then you're going to mark where the sand line is. Your next level will be the silt particles. Mark a little line. And then your last group of particles, because they are super small, are the clay particles. They could settle out even overnight. This jar has been sitting for more than 24 hours at this point. You can see that the water's still a little bit cloudy, meaning that not quite all of the clay has actually settled down. So by separating those particles into their different sizes in the jar, you can then quickly know your percentages by volume and find out your soil type. But by marking those lines of sand, silt, and clay, I can then take the USDA soil triangle, which plots those percentages of sand, silt, and clay particles, and triangulate my soil texture very easily, just with the jar and the soil and some time. The slightly harder way to do that, though, in my opinion, is a little more fun. It's called the ribbon test or soil texture by feel.
All right, here we go.
So here I've got two different types of soil harvested locally here from Denver. In order to do the soil texture test by feel, you need soil, some sort of tray to contain all of this unless you're doing it out in the yard, and then some water. So first you want to have the soil about the texture of modeling clay or maybe cookie dough, I guess. You're going to squeeze it, and if it makes a nice ball like this and doesn't fall apart, you've got about the right texture. Then using your forefinger and your thumb, you're going to try, oops, got a little worm in there. You want to remove large items like worms. Then using your forefinger and your thumb, you want to try to press that soil into a ribbon. And this takes some amount of practice. But you can see that I'm getting a decently long ribbon before it breaks under its own weight. The longer the ribbon, the more clay is in your soil. As soon as you've got 2 inches or more of soil, you've got a clay soil. Sandier soils, in contrast, do not make ribbons. So a little more water in that one to get the right texture that I'm going for. There we go. So sandy soils, because of those larger particles that don't stick together as well, you can see that this won't make much of a ribbon before it breaks. So that's telling me the length of that ribbon, telling me how much clay is in the soil. The next thing you'll do is to moisten your fingers so that you've got really wet hand. And then between your thumb and your forefinger, you just want to gauge how gritty that soil feels. Does it feel like sandpaper, or does it feel like you're rubbing shampoo between your fingers? That's giving you an idea of how much sand is in your soil. So that can give you some idea of your texture. There are a number of flow charts and things you can find online, including at the CSU website, that will help you to, based on the feeling of grittiness and the length of the ribbon, apply a name to your soil type. Now, the easiest way to know your soil texture and a lot of other information about your soil is to send a soil sample to a soil lab. For example, the Colorado State University Soil Lab is here in central Denver on the Spur campus at the National Western Center. You can send about 2 cups of dry soil to the soil lab, and they will send you a report that includes not only your soil texture, but also your soil pH, the organic matter percentage, and a wide variety of soil nutrient information. There are commercial labs that'll do this as well. Many of them are local.
A lot of information from that lab, and I like these examples. Tell us where should you get your soil samples from at your house?
Sure. So the soil samples, it's important to consider 2 things, both the area that you're planting and then the soil depth. So the area is pretty easy, right? It's where are you planning to garden? That's where you should take the sample. But don't take just one, take several samples from the whole area, mix them together in a bucket, and then submit one composite sample from that. That makes sure you're not sampling the one weird area in your yard and getting some strange results. The second important thing to consider is how deep you're going to get your soil sample. You don't want to just scrape soil off of the surface. You want to get down a relevant depth for your plant roots. For most plants, the minimum depth is 6 inches. So you can use a tool like this soil knife that's already got a graduated 6 inches here and know that I'm getting down deeply enough. You can estimate that too. For many native plants, drought-tolerant plants, and trees and shrubs, you want to go down up to a foot to get that soil sample again that you're mixing into a bucket and then submitting the composite sample to the lab.
So once you know your soil type, how does that impact your watering?
That's a good question, and it really depends on how much sand and how much clay are in the soil, resulting in how quickly water will move through your landscape. The more sand you have, just as you saw the ribbon wouldn't stick together, it also doesn't hold on to water or to nutrients that well, for that matter. So if you have really sandy soil, it means that you're going to be irrigating your landscape slightly more frequently, but with less water. In contrast, if you have a high clay percentage, that means that soil holds water a long time, and so your watering is going to be less frequent, but more water at a time. You also may need to apply your water especially slowly to make sure that that dense sponge of the clay has time to soak up the water as opposed to it just running off the surface and down the street.
All right, so soil type, really good to know that. Okay. All right, next up we've got another video if you want to stick around, and we're going to give you 3 different ways to plant a plant.